I hope you take as much pride as I do in hearing what great Georgians like Saxby Chambliss, Chris Clark, Chris Carr, Laura Meadows, and others have to say about Georgia EMC. We're humbled by their kind words, but Georgia EMC is so much more than the 44 employees who work for you. Georgia EMC is all of us gathered here in this room today, and all those back at your EMCs keeping the lights on and working in your communities every day. So every single EMC employee and director in this state can rightfully take pride in the value placed on Georgia EMC and our members by our state's leaders in Atlanta and Washington, and by your community leaders throughout the state of Georgia. We're pleased to provide you with a signed copy of Mr. Edgar Harrell's book as a special memento for this annual meeting. And in addition to that, we've included a DVD of a televised documentary program on Walter Harrison that was produced by the University of Georgia Center for Continuing Education in 1979. We only discovered this documentary existed when going through the extensive collection of Mr. Harrison's papers archived at Georgia Southern University earlier this year as part of our 75th anniversary research. The opening segment of our 75th anniversary video is a short clip from the 1979 documentary, and we hope you will enjoy watching this important film on Georgia's place in rural electric history, thanks to pioneers like Walter Harrison and other great leaders from that era. There's another connection in the video to Walter Harrison. The narrator you heard is Mr. A.C. Marshall, a native of Monroe who now lives in Gainesville. A.C. was introduced to us by Georgia EMC, at Georgia EMC by former State Representative Bobby Carroll of Monroe when he learned of our research on Georgia EMC's history. It turns out that in 1950, when rural Georgia, a newspaper publication, not a magazine, was only 5 years old, an 8th grader named A.C. Marshall was working for the Walton Tribune newspaper in Monroe, where rural Georgia was printed at the time. Walter Harrison insisted on rural Georgia being postmarked in Millen. So the folks at the Walton Tribune assigned young A.C. Marshall, 14 years old, no driver's license, mind you, with a task of driving a converted station wagon as a delivery truck loaded with all of 40,000 issues of rural Georgia from Monroe to Millen, 300 miles round trip, where he met Walter Harrison on the loading dock of the post office on the first Saturday of each month. A.C. became a close friend of Mr. Walter and tried to soak up all the political knowledge and skills that he could. A.C. went on to get his degree in communications and journalism at UGA and began his career in radio. A.C., please stand and let us show our appreciation for you helping make this effort possible. We're glad you agreed to be pulled out of retirement from your radio days to be part of this special project. Bobby Carroll is here too, and Bobby, we thank you for your service to Georgia and for introducing us to AC. Thank you. I just want to say a special thank you to Mr. Harrell for being here today, a true American hero and somebody that keeps that spirit going, and that hopefully, as I said before, that we will never forget the brave men and women that gave us the opportunity to be here and do what we do today. I also want to thank Eternal Review, the young group of men that sang from us from Burke County. I first heard them at Jim Andrews' funeral, and I thought since that time they'd be perfect to sing at this group. I would tell you that they don't accept any pay. They do it for their love of the Lord and performing. They won't accept any remuneration from us. We were able, Lindsay finally got out of them this morning that they are building a new school in their community in Burke County. So we're going to make a contribution to their school project, and we'll send that information to each of the EMCs in state in case any of you care to contribute a few dollars to their project too. So we're very appreciative of them being here. And Chris, you can speak after anybody. So I usually try to plan it so our board chairman speaks after the youth tour delegates. So thank you for being here today, and that was a wonderful, wonderful remarks that you made. You know, it's hard for me to believe that I'm standing up here and this is my last annual meeting in my career where I will address a group of folks that I work for. The first thing you do is you wonder, my goodness, where did the time go to? My rural electric career started in 1949 when my dad became manager of Valley Electric Membership Corporation in Natchitoches, Louisiana. I was 6 years old. I never experienced not having electricity in my life. We always had electricity, but I had the privilege of going with him on many of Saturdays in his 49 Ford, and we'd go through the little dusty roads across the countryside and go to rural communities and homes where people had never had electricity before. And I got to experience watching the excitement on women's faces when electricity was turned on in their homes, or at schools in rural communities when people would come out by the 100 or 200 and have covered dish dinners thanking Valley Electric for bringing electricity to them. So I got to experience what it really was like before we came along and have performed the job that we've done. I'm not sure how many years ago it was. It's probably been maybe 15 years ago. There was a NRECA annual meeting was in Dallas, Texas, and Lyndon Johnson had been deceased for some time, and NRECA wanted to honor Lyndon Johnson, so they invited Lady Bird to come to receive the award that they were going to present in honor of Lyndon Johnson. And about 2 weeks before the meeting, Lady Bird became ill and was unable to come. So they invited Lucy Johnson, the daughter of one of Lyndon's two daughters, to come to accept the award. And a close friend of mine that worked for NRECA was to pick her up at the airport in Dallas that evening, bring her to take her to dinner and then to the hotel, and she would receive the award the next morning. And he asked me, he said, you want to join us for dinner tonight? He said, I'd rather have somebody else to go and help carry the conversation and not just be by myself. So I went with Tony and Lucy Johnson to dinner that night, and immediately felt like, I've known this young woman all of my life. I thought it'd be very difficult to visit with the daughter of a president of the United States, but just the opposite. She was just very open, and so she started telling us stories about growing up in the White House and about her father, and the one I remember is I'm relating to what I've talked about in bringing electricity to the rural areas. She said she was about 15 or 16 years old, and one day they drove into Pedernales, and says the sign, they tell me it's still there. I've not been there in a number of years, but there's supposedly still a sign when you drive into the city limits of Pedernales, Texas, that says, Pedernales, Texas, home of Pedernales Electric Cooperative. And she said, we drove by there one day, and she said, Daddy, she said, that sign ought to say the home of Lyndon Baines Johnson, President of the United States. And she said, he looked right at me and he said, Lucy, he said, the REA changed America. And that sign says exactly what it should say, Pedernales, Texas, the home of Pedernales REA. And that always struck me that somebody that grew up like Lucy Johnson would understand the importance, and certainly her dad did, of what our program did for folks in those days. When I retire next April, I will have been in Georgia for 18 years and 7 months. I came here and started work on September the 15th, 1997. I can vividly remember my first day at the office. I came into the office, and Jim Hubbard, who had been the acting CEO at Georgia EMC for 6 or 8 months while you all went through the search process, was there to greet me that first morning and spend an hour or two with me, and then the plan was that he was going to leave. So we were sitting in the office there, and the telephone rang, and Janet Wright told Jim, said, Sammy Jenkins is on the phone. Sammy was president of the board of Planners EMC. And so Jim picked up the phone and he said, I'm going to put it on speakerphone, put it on speakerphone. And many of you in here know Sammy Jenkins. And Sammy said, is he at work? And Jim told him, said, yes, sir, he's been here for about an hour. We're visiting about things. And Sammy said, well, tell him if he moved up here with a U-Haul trailer, he might not want to turn it in for a few days in case he doesn't want to stay. So I never was sure whether Sammy was joking or was serious. So at any rate, Georgia EMC had gone through a lot of turmoil when I came here. They had a lot of rough times. And I had some of my contemporaries and other statewides around the country call me after they found out I had accepted a job here and say, are you out of your mind? You're going to Georgia with all the problems that they've had in Georgia. And I reminded them that I was in Louisiana where the G&T was bankrupt and the IOUs were buying electric cooperatives, and they didn't know what trouble was if they hadn't been in Louisiana. So I arrived in Georgia, and I thought, what do I first need to do in a state where the statewide organization had not been what it should have been over the past years? And I thought, the first thing I've got to do is to try to build trust. And my game plan was over the next few months, I put thousands of miles on my car and spent hours and hours, a lot of late night hours driving back from EMCs to go to board meetings and annual meetings and to be out among our directors and our managers and get to know them and let them get to know me. And I think to this day, and I tell every new person coming into the EMC world, the most important thing you can do is the windshield time and going out to where the EMCs are located and visit with those folks on their own turf and let them ask you questions and to build that trust and to show that we want to provide value for the dues that they pay to support our organization. I've over these 18 years have established some incredible relationships. Matter of fact, I think I have a relationship with everybody in this room today, but some that have gone on to the next life that are really, really special in my life, and many of you today that have supported me and when you thought I was wrong, told me I was wrong, but were always willing to support and offer that to me. Directors and particularly rural folks, and I'm not, I glanced over there and saw Chip somewhere. I'm not excluding the folks that are in the city now. Those were rural, those were cow pastures one day, and it's just part of the culture of Georgia that they've grown up. But our directors and managers are some of the finest people that you'll find anywhere. They're honest people, they're hard-working people, and I'm not going to get into a list of the names, but one that I've got to say that and most of you in here also knew Robert Reeves. Lee, your dad was one of the most cantankerous men I have ever known, but he and I loved one another, and we had quite a special relationship. And if Janet would tell me, Mr. Reeves is on the phone, I would think, well, there's a good chance I'm in trouble, that Robert's not happy about something I've done. And so I'd know when I answered the phone if Robert would say, now, Paul, when we hang up, we're still going to be friends. I would know I was getting ready to get a good whipping. So, at any rate, those kind of relationships have just been incredible in Georgia. I think Georgia EMC through the years, you've given us the resources to hire as good a staff as any statewide has anywhere in the United States. I'm proud of the people that work for Georgia EMC, and I'd ask all of them that are in the room here now, would you please stand up if you work for Georgia EMC? Thank you all so much. We have incredible people that don't look at this as a job, but look at this as a passion and something they do to provide the best service that they can for our members. As a CEO of an organization, you have a tremendous responsibility. All of you out there that are CEOs know that. I look at most of the folks that work for Georgia EMC are almost like children to me. And over these 18 years, we've gone through, as a company, we've gone through good times and we've gone through bad times. And we were always there for one another when we did that. We've gone through, as individuals, difficult times and we've gone through good times. They kid me at the office because I see maybe Monica did here today. Right behind my desk is a box of Kleenex. And our employees and associates know that they can come in my office anytime, and some do and close the door, and when they do, I'll reach around and get the box of Kleenex and put on my desk. And, I've helped them, and they've helped me through the years. And so we've developed a great staff at Georgia EMC that I think really provides the kind of service that our members are entitled to. I remember my first board meeting was in September. I think it was the Acre Luncheon in September of 1997. Galen Mills was chairman of the board, and he and I were sitting next to one another. I didn't know Galen all that well, and when they started serving lunch, I thought I'd make a little funny to Galen. And I looked at him and I said, having come from Louisiana, I said, I don't see any crawfish or shrimp. And Galen looked at me and he said, you get used to barbecue and fried chicken. So something that I would never forget. I'm going to say it again. I say it many times when I'm standing up here. One of the things that I'm most thankful for is the family of companies, for OPC and Mike Smith and Georgia Transmission and Jerry Donovan and Georgia Systems Operation Corporation and Greg Ford. I can tell you that the family of companies work together. The relationship is incredible. There's nowhere else in this country where, in a rural electric state, where those statewide organizations work together in harmony for your best benefit. Employees are almost interchangeable. I mean, we talk on daily and weekly basis and coordinate what we do to be able to provide better service to you. And I think the family of companies in Georgia is by far the best statewide organization of cooperatives anywhere in the United States. As a board, you have been great in providing resources for Georgia EMC over the 18 years I've been here to let us make a real impact in the state of Georgia. We serve almost half the population in the state. Our government relations people will tell you that at the legislature, we're recognized. I mean, when you serve half the population, people are going to pay attention to you. You folks are always in contact with your local elected officials, your state representatives, and you give us the power and the recognition in the state capitol that few organizations in this state have, and it carries over as well and is into the national politics, into our congressional members and our U.S. senators. EMCs are held in extremely high regard in the state of Georgia. Governor Deal, we have an incredible relationship with Governor Deal. The work that we have done throughout the state has given us the opportunity to participate in many state boards and to meet people that frankly we'd have never had the opportunity to meet and work with if it hadn't been for the support that you all have given us. Matter of fact, a few months back I was sitting next to the governor at lunch one day, and he had just asked me if I would serve as chairman of the Georgia Tourism Foundation. That made 4 boards, and I was chairman of 2 of them. And I told him, I said, Governor, you're going to have to start paying part of my salary. I'm spending as much time working for you as I am working for the EMCs. But I think that because of your activity in communities and the recognition that we get as EMCs, that the EMCs have risen in stature in this state. The other thing that you have done that is so important to me is you have never questioned in our budget or monies that we've asked you to help support us with to support youth programs in this state. The FFA, the 4-H, the Washington Youth Tour, our Walter Harrison scholarships. You've heard me say this before too. There's no money that we spend for anything at Georgia EMC that gets more mileage for you than the money we spend supporting youth leadership programs. And I can tell you, Georgia stands at the top of all states in the quality of the programs that they have available. I want to just kind of end here, and I'm just kind of reminiscing, and I don't want to delay bringing this to a close. But I guess my most important thanks goes out again to the associates that stood a few minutes ago. They're the ones that deserve the credit for making Georgia EMC a great organization. They're the ones that are away from their families at night and on weekends when we do things that the statewide needs to do to support you. And they deserve the credit for making Georgia EMC the great organization that it is. Tomorrow you will most likely select somebody that will lead Georgia EMC into the future. And I've no doubt that you will make a great choice, and that person will continue to be very successful at Georgia EMC with your support. They'll have new ideas and they'll have a new vision that will take Georgia EMC to yet another level. I'm not saying goodbye because I'm going to be around until April of next year, maybe in a different capacity. But I will always cherish the special relationships that I've had with you all and the support that you all have given me through the years. 7 years ago, when I went through the worst time in my life, when I lost my wife for 45 years, you stood behind me, and I will never forget that. And a few months ago, in September, when I remarried my beautiful wife, Connie, raise your hand, you celebrated with me after coming through a long journey. And my job has kept me going, and my friendship with you all has kept me going through those years and looking forward to the next chapter in my life. So again, you know, I just wonder, where did all the time go? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.